You have to go on a space mission, and the spaceship travels at relativistic speeds, and by the time you return to Earth, it will be the year 3000 AD. Now you have, I don't know how much you have in your net worth, but think about that amount. What would you turn that into before you take the trip to ensure you don't come home to financial ruin? I'll let you pause the video to think about it, and I'll give my answer. Now, the knee-jerk reaction is obviously gold, but I want to point out that throughout history, different kinds of metals have served their purpose, right? We had a Bronze Age, we had a Stone Age, we had an Iron Age, we have an Oil Age right now, right? The day will probably come when oil is no longer viable, and it could actually drop in value in terms of real value, right? It'll probably go up in terms of dollars. But when oil is too scarce to use commercially, it could drop in value because you won't have people driving around gas guzzlers, and it won't be commercially viable to make mass produce gas guzzlers, and you could very well see oil prices drop as demand drops, right? The same could happen with gold if it changes. So the knee-jerk reaction, gold, I would take it with a grain of salt. I would put some in gold, not all of it. The same goes with all the other elements on the periodic table that people are worshiping at the moment, right? Right now, palladium is very popular, rhodium as well, iridium, rare earth metal mining stocks, right? I have REMX. I haven't found a way to invest in physical rare earth metals without paying either a huge premium or taking up a lot of real estate. I haven't really thought of a good way to do that. I have some Canadian nickels from 1981 and earlier because they're made of pure nickel. Nickel is actually quite rare, by the way. Okay, let's get that out of the way. The other knee-jerk reaction is a portfolio of global stocks, right? Now, I want you to think about so we're talking about the year 3000. Imagine you had a stock portfolio full of certificates of stocks from when the Vikings arrived in America, right? Or maybe stocks issued by Christopher Columbus. Well, I guess they might be a collectible, right? But certainly no financial asset value, right? And unless you can get paper certificates of stocks, maybe not so much, right? Okay, so take that with a big grain of salt for sure. Bitcoin would probably be a big answer on here, but now think about this. Why does Bitcoin have value? It has value because people are willing to mine it, right? When you mine it, you get paid a certain amount of Bitcoin. Now, eventually, the cost of mining the Bitcoin is just going to completely outstrip the Bitcoin itself, right? Either that, or we're going to have to produce so many Bitcoin that we're going to hyperinflate the Bitcoin supply, or well, I guess that's not viable anymore because there's a hard limit on how many Bitcoin. But the crypto supply could certainly hyperinflate, right? It's kind of like saying that the US dollar hyperinflates, but dollar bills printed in a certain year will never be increased in supply, so they can't hyperinflate. Therefore, you should just go buy a bunch of dollars printed in 2021. That supply can never hyperinflate. Well, I guess that might be true, right? So, for example, if you're sitting on a bunch of a very specific piece of currency that in which the whole currency has hyperinflated, I guess you might be sitting okay, right? So I collect one of my favorite pieces of currency is Mary Curry's 20,000 Zoit bill from 1988, right, in Poland. And at the time, I believe every 2,000 Polish Zoit was $1. So it was 10 US dollars. And today that bill is worth, depending on condition, anywhere from 5 to 50 US dollars. So it definitely hasn't kept up with inflation, right? You would have been much better off buying silver with that bill at the time, but certainly a lot better than keeping 20,000 Polish Zoid in a bank account or in Polish bonds at that time, right? So I guess it could have saved some of your loss of purchasing power. Okay, so we talked about metals, we talked about commodities, we talked about crypto, global currencies, or global stock portfolios. Now I think a more advisable route, so I'm recording this in 2021, is to go out there and just buy a ton of crap, right? Pokemon cards, newspapers, and put them in a safe and wait 1,000 years. There's a much better chance that any of that has value in a museum, right? Especially if you buy a bunch of newspapers reporting on COVID-19 or any relics of today, right? If you had an antique radio from 1,000 years ago or an antique piece of newspaper from 1,000 years ago. So here's what I would do. I take half of my net worth and turn it into a portfolio of diverse portfolio of all the elements on the periodic table. I take the other half and buy relics of today. Leave a comment if you disagree.